Today is May 1st, and I do want to take a minute to address one more thing before I sign off, as I do think it's a fairly big elephant in the room. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Never Peak Podcast. By the end of this episode, my goal is for you to have a better understanding on why doing hard things might be the only way for you to make your life feel easier. For those who don't know me, back in 2020, gyms closed during COVID, and I had a coworker who convinced me to start running. That year marked the first time that I ran more than a mile in my entire life. I never really enjoyed the process of running, but what I did enjoy was the mental challenge it offered. And I slowly got more into the running community, attending running clubs, starting to run with friends, talk about running, follow runners on social media, all that good stuff. And of course, learning about people like Stephen Prefontaine, Cam Hanes, and the infamous David Goggins. Although I had always been a decent athlete, running long distance was a huge challenge for me, not necessarily physically, but more so mentally. I come from a very supportive and loving family, so I never really had to endure anything extremely challenging growing up. But running seemed to offer me an outlet to build up a mental strength that I knew I needed to have for inevitable challenges that lie ahead for me and my family. So in 2020, I set a 5-year goal of running 100 miles in under 24 hours. I never spoke that goal aloud to friends or family, but as they saw my mileage increasing and running becoming more a part of who I was asked over and over again, why? Like, why in the world would you want to run a marathon or eventually an ultra marathon? And honestly, I never really gave a great response. I'd say things like discipline, growth, to know what I'm capable of, but I don't really think I grasped what it was doing for me mentally. From 2020 through September 2024, I had completed a number of challenges. I had run 3 of the 15K Tough Mudder distances. I completed 4x48 challenges that David Goggins talks about, basically where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours straight. So 48 miles in a weekend. I also did one of the 50K Wild Duluth distances. I did a 50 miler out in Moab and a triathlon sprint. And then for training for all of those events, I completed several marathon distances or greater on my own. That fall, in preparation, so we're talking September 24, that fall, I was signed up to run the Twin Cities Marathon, which had gotten canceled the year before due to extreme heat, which forced me to run that marathon on my own with no aid stations. A different story. But if you've run the Twin Cities Marathon, you know every runner warns you about the hill from mile 20 to 23 before the final 3 miles. I had heard about this hill over and over again from people who had run the race before, and I promised I would go run it beforehand, which of course I never actually did. Any ultra runner will tell you that's typically the case. We're not the best about preparing for it. We like to just go into it and get it done. Looking back, I probably should have listened and practiced on the actual route, but in a sense, I had already done exactly that. So the morning of the race, those first 13 miles, I was leaving some gas in the tank for the dreaded hill that everybody talks about. And for those who have run a marathon, and maybe it's just me, but as soon as I get beyond mile 13, my mind starts to wander and I focus less on the actual technicalities of the course, which can be dangerous. But in a controlled setting like the Twin Cities Marathon, I was fine with letting that happen. Now, here's what's interesting. Before I ever ran that marathon, I ran the Wild Duluth 50K. That's a 31-mile race with over 5,000 feet of elevation gain, which is basically a mile of elevation. It's like running the difference between the flatlands of Nebraska to the mile-high city of Denver, 5,000 feet up. To make it even more difficult, the run is on the Superior Hiking Trail in the fall when all of the leaves are covering the rocks and roots that litter the ground. Both times I've done it, it's also snowed the morning of and then drizzled throughout the race. Since it's so remote on the trail, there's no crowds, there's no pavement until maybe the last mile, and a huge challenge is to stay focused so you don't injure yourself. I've seen a few ankles literally snap from the technicalities on the course. It's for sure one of the hardest races I've done, if not the hardest. So fast forward, Twin Cities Marathon, we're talking. Mile 19, I start to prepare mentally for the big hill that everyone had warned me about. I get to mile 20, I'm ready. Mile 21, still kind of waiting. Mile 22, starting to think that I had the mileage wrong in my head or was misremembering when the hill was supposed to be. By mile 23 or 24, I finally asked someone next to me about the hill. Turns out we had already run through it. I had run straight through the hill without ever realizing that that hill is what everyone had been warning me about. I remember thinking to myself, wow, like that was nothing. Not because it was easy, but because I had done something so much more difficult at previous races. I'm not trying to sound like some macho man or discrediting anybody who warned me about the hill, because it probably was the hardest point in the race. But it just felt so easy compared to what I had been through before. That's when I realized a deeper purpose that running was serving for me. Many people think you do hard things to impress others or to show toughness, but that's not it. You do hard things so normal things feel easier. You do hard things so hard is less of a challenge. And you do hard things so when life puts a hill in front of you, you can run right through it. Not because it's easy, but because you've already climbed bigger hills. 500 feet of elevation does not faze you when you've completed 5,000. Most people out there are trying to make life easier by avoiding discomfort and struggle, but that's backwards. If you avoid hard things, everything's going to feel hard. If you chase hard things, everything's going to get easier. The hills don't change. The hills are still there and they don't get smaller. You change, and that's the point. So if you're looking at something in your life right now and it feels overwhelming, maybe the answer isn't to avoid that challenge. Maybe the answer is to build yourself into someone who takes it head on so the next challenge is easier to manage. Because once you've gone through something difficult, you become greater than the challenges you'll face in the future. And suddenly, the hill you've heard is hard is just another step that's going to make you stronger. This podcast is about doing hard things. And this story is why I believe it's important for all of us to seek growth through suffering every day. Today is May 1st, and I do want to take a minute to address one more thing before I sign off, as I do think it's a fairly big elephant in the room. My texts and DMs have been filled with discussions on this topic. The Minnesota Wild defeated the Dallas Stars last night in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, which means they will now be advancing to round 2 against the Colorado Avalanche. Being a Minnesota hockey guy, I've cheered for the Wild for a long time, but as many of you know, I have a brother who now plays for the Avalanche. So for those who have been asking, I am 100% cheering for the Avalanche. No part of my previous loyalty to the Minnesota Wild exists anymore, and I am exclusively a Colorado Avalanche fan at heart. I think it'll be an extremely entertaining series, but my hope is that the Avs win in 4. That might lose us a few followers, but so be it. Last but certainly not least, please do not forget to check out our productivity drink, NPX, for focused energy and hydration. We've got a lot of people loving the benefits, and it's available to friends and family now at the link in my personal bio. Others can pre-order at the link in our Never Peak bio. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon on the next episode of the Never Peak podcast. Go Avalanche.